Good day and welcome back to Sincerely John. We're coming to the end of chapter 19 with the crucifixion and the burial of Jesus and into the resurrection. So let me jump straight into reading those first verses, which will get us into a discussion of just the timeline of the resurrection. As you'll see, many of the Gospels touch on different things here. There's so much happening in a short space of time, and for the different writers, different things stand out. So we'll start off in our discussion by laying it out. In chapter 19, the end then. And so, because it was the day of preparation for the Jewish Passover, and since the tomb was close at hand, they laid Jesus there. And that then obviously is Joseph and Nicodemus. Early on Sunday morning, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance. She ran and found Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved. She said, "They have taken the Lord's body out of the tomb, and we don't know where they have put him." Peter and the other disciple started out for the tomb. They were both running, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. The other disciple being John. He stooped and looked in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he didn't go in. Then Simon Peter arrived and went inside, and nothing will hold Simon Peter back. He also noticed the linen wrappings lying there, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. And then the disciple who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then they still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead. Then they went home, and then Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. So let's just piece it together. I've got a timeline over here, so we can go back and forth from that as we look at it.
Yeah.
Starts around Sunday, 4:30 to 6 o'clock. Early morning, it says, before sunrise.
Yeah.
So that's where the story kicks off. There's an earthquake. There's an angel that comes and rolls away the stone. And then the four women go to the tomb.
Yeah, which is not in John, right?
Only one is mentioned there. There's just one character there.
Yeah.
Mary Magdalene, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I don't think we'll get to probably touch on all the details regarding, what happens from when he's raised and who he sees, but there surely is a lot of detail that John does leave out, right?
Yeah.
And I think you've got it all. I'm just going to put it on there so that we can see and follow along.
Yeah. But it's really interesting that John, when we get back to the text now, we must touch on it. Why Mary? Why does he single her out?
Yeah.
She seems like a spokesperson for the woman, but we'll see just now. So the four women go to the tomb early in that morning, and it does seem about 4:30, 6 o'clock. It's dark, and they're eager. Even the night before, they've prepared the spices for that, just at the end of the Sabbath day. So now they're allowed to work. So after 6 o'clock that evening, they would have started preparing that. And just to say, Nicodemus and Joseph, it was a rushed thing. They just did what they could, get him into the tomb. So they just wanted to do the job properly, go and anoint him. And then the women enter. They find no body. Two angels appear. One speaks and says, "He is not here. He is risen." So again, in one of the other Gospels, just one angel is mentioned. There's actually two, but the one speaks. And then the women go back to the disciples. There's four of them. It's Mary Magdalene, there's Josephine, Mary, the mother of James,
Joanna,
which is mother of Jesus,
Yeah.
and then Joanna.
And
Salome, there we go, well done. Yeah. And then Mary Magdalene tells them. So like it says in John, she's the one speaking. And then Peter and John directly run out from the disciples from that meeting where the women announce it. And they run to the tomb. And we see that later that the women also went back to the tomb following after them, but they're up ahead. John arrives first, sees the linen. Peter enters and sees the folded cloth, the headpiece. They return back home because there's nothing else to find, and they're going to report to the disciples. And then the women stay behind. I've underlined that because without that little detail, the rest doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe it's worth just discussing some of the events in that portion.
Yes,
Right? Because
yes.
that's pretty much where we're at now, where,
Yeah.
you know, Mary arrives and she gets there and the stone's rolled away and she sends for them, right? And there's a lot of interesting things in that whole account in John, I
Yeah.
find. I actually want to read a bit from the commentary I've been reading, but just the whole thing around the clothes and how it was
Yes.
lying. I think I've never really understood or actually looked into the depth of the detail of how the clothes were actually lying. And it seems like from the studies and the Greek words surrounding the description of what happened there,
Yeah.
and what made it so striking, significant, was that, you know, when John looked in, it looked exactly the same as if he was still almost lying there, but just the body was gone, which in my mind I would have always thought, you know, the clothes were flat, and maybe it sounded like he folded up the headpiece.
Yes.
But from what I understand
it's not a rushed thing.
yeah, but from what I understand from the studies is that it was actually kind of stayed intact. If you would imagine the spices being stuffed into the body, so the body was
body's
literally
just
just removed. And then Peter obviously goes in and he's like, yes, look at this, like this really, his body's just gone. Everything else was left exactly as it was. Like it was like almost like vaporized. I mean, I'm not saying it's vaporized. Vanishing, that's the right word. So it's very interesting, and I just want to read a piece that I found quite interesting. It says, "What did John believe when he looked in and it said now he believed?" You know, he said, "I imagine that he might have explained it to Peter like this: Don't you see, Peter, that no one has moved the body or disturbed the grave clothes? They are lying exactly as Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea left them on the eve of the Sabbath. Yet the body is gone. It has not been stolen, it has not been moved. Clearly it must have passed through the cloths, leaving them as we see them now."
Yeah.
And then it says, "Jesus must be risen." So it's just an interesting picture to imagine, you know, if it had stayed kind of intact, because like you said, they stuffed it with the spices and everything,
That's
which 42 kilograms or something worth of spices. And then for John to look inside and kind of notice it looks the same still.
Yeah.
But the stone was rolled away. There were certain parts being removed.
Yes.
And obviously we do know what the resurrection means, the significance in our faith, right? What all these things needed to happen, and there needs to be good evidence that he was resurrected.
Yeah, yeah. But even the folding up, you can imagine Jesus vanishing out of the cloth and then taking off.
Yeah.
Yeah, both is very significant.
Yeah.
It's like I am alive and I'm leaving it neatly.
And that's how
I'm walking out of this grave.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not just removed from this grave.
Yeah.
I came alive and I walk out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and everything stays the same. And then you have these angels sitting, one at the foot and one at the head, speaking to Mary. And I think the first thing, and I never thought of it this way, the first thing my mind went to is the mercy seat, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
Where there's the angel on each end.
Seated over there.
The presence of the Most High, the Holy God, is there, which Jesus...
And Aaron's staff in there being a symbol of eternal life.
Yeah.
The stick that just never dies. Yeah.
So it's almost like it's a New Testament, a New Covenant picture of that.
Yes.
In the tomb there.
No, it's incredible. It really is, the entire picture. But it's beautiful how the women get to see it first because they're up to go and tend a dead body, which is not there.
Yeah.
They've got nothing to do now. What now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as the other guys come, there's no encounter with Jesus. The women who were there first, they get spoken to.
Yeah.
By the angel and then by Jesus.
Yeah.
And then what's the significance of Mary Magdalene being the first witness to the resurrection of Jesus?
I'm not sure.
No? For me, it's just, she's a written off one. So some of the other disciples they're fishermen, not inherently found broken, marred, sinful. Of course they are sinners. But she, out of the whole lot of them, I think you could probably take a Matthew in there. He's the tax collector, worse than sinner at some stage, it says. But for her, she's been demon possessed.
Yeah.
And she had this incredible encounter of falling at Jesus' feet where she was not welcome at the table at the Pharisee's house, and weeping over him, anointing his feet for burial, and now she's the first one to see him. There's grace shown to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think of the moment between the crucifixion, you know, our chapter 19 story, and the resurrection, that it's the evening that passes. And I mean, you've just lost your master, your leader, the one that many of them believe would have been the Messiah, but in a different way, you know, redeeming Israel in a political kind of way. So in many ways, when Jesus died, because it says there, I can't remember the verse reference, it's in the first couple of verses, they still didn't understand, I think it's verse 9. They still didn't understand the resurrection, right? That he was going to be resurrected. So there was mourning. It was almost like their faith had died. Their hope had died.
Yeah, everything came to an end.
He's gone, but something that remained, and that's what I see in Mary, is that love. Like, he's gone, and what I thought possibly was going to happen, it doesn't seem like it turned out that way, because she doesn't really believe until she thinks she's speaking to the gardener. Yeah. And he calls her name. And in something in that, because we need to speak about that as well, you know, the appearance of Jesus, which you have this whole timeline of, but nobody recognizes him. Yeah. Which means there's something different. Yet we also see later that Thomas was able to put his hand in his side and his finger in the... So there's something different, but there's also the same that you can recognize by. But Mary, maybe that goes back to what you were saying, that significance of her encounters with Jesus, and that she's almost like the written off one, that she's the first one to encounter again that love, because I think essentially that's what we need to remember, like when our faith and our hope feels like it's dead, dead and buried, there's nothing left. What I remember is what he died for. Yeah. He died for you and he died for me, and I think that's probably the most significant part of how I see her in that picture. Yeah. But it must have been a weird...
evident, eh?
Yeah, because she's the one who also anoints at the second meeting, right? Yes. She anoints him, and she constantly pours out her love towards him. So even when the other possibility seems to have, you know, faded away, of salvation and whatever else of the Israelites, she still comes back because she loved him. Yeah. And the disciples, they still loved him. He was still their friend. He was still their leader. And now they only get to understand, man, but he's so much more.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's an incredible way. Just that phrase, much has been forgiven, much love. Yeah. Yeah. It stands out for her. Were we going back to the text or the timeline?
Oh, I guess we ran ahead of ourselves a little bit. They were both running. That's a funny part.
Peter and the others started out to the tomb, and then Simon Peter arrived and went inside, while the cloth that had covered Jesus' head was folded up and lying apart from the other wrappings. Then verse 8. Then the disciples who had reached the tomb first also went in, and he saw and believed. For until then, they still hadn't understood the scriptures that Jesus must rise from the dead. And then they went home. So he's not there. He's risen from the dead. What now? Back to the meeting over there, back to the disciples. Yeah. Just to say, he must have risen. Yeah. And just blown away still.
and then they basically hide away still, right?
Yes.
Because they're now afraid of the Pharisees and everyone, the Roman, you know, guard and whatever, who will come to get them. Yeah. But now everything that was said is now being fulfilled. But they have no evidence apart from that he's not there.
He's not there.
Yet Mary now has this
encounter. Where is he?
Yeah. And that's where your timeline comes in handy, because Jesus appears to them on the road. Yeah. And they're like, they say, he goes, why are you sad? Which isn't in the John Gospel. I don't know if you want to...
Yeah. Let me read you from verse 11 then. So Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. I'm going to continue seeing now that arc picture of yours. Dear woman, why are you crying? The angels asked her. Because they had taken away my Lord, she replied. And I don't know where they've put him. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. So just two angels inside turned to leave the grave, going out, and they're outside. And she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is in Hebrew, teacher. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and my God, and your God." I'm going to come back and hang on those scriptures just now, but just for a moment, that encounter with Jesus, why does she not recognize him? You mentioned it just now. So in the timeline, we're going to see there's another meeting like that with the guys on the road to Emmaus.
That's right.
Where they traveled the wrong road for a while. Could have been half an hour, and they don't recognize him until he breaks the bread at the table, and suddenly, wait. And then he disappears, and then he appears in Jerusalem with other disciples, you know. So Jesus clearly has a resurrected body. So all of these scars that would have been on his body, all the beatings, the bruises on his face, the scars on the head, all of that would have been gone. But then with Thomas, we find he's still got the scars on the hands at least, and in the side. He could open up and still show that. So some evidence of the wounding, but in the rest of his body, physically, it was a different looking body, which we have to ask ourselves, what's your resurrection body going to look like? What's mine going to look like?
Yeah. I think in many ways, I think that the big picture of that is that it's just going to be better. It's not going to hold us back, because, you know, in the sense that our natural bodies and our minds and everything hold us back now, right? Because we are soul and spirit. That's what lives on our spirit. So I'm assuming the significant parts of recognition and those things, we would be able to recognize each other. Is that by physical traits? I don't know. I know the scripture doesn't tell us, right?
So both recognitions here are something quite different. It's Mary.
His voice,
Yeah, obviously part of that is he knows my name. Which triggers something of it's you. The way he said it, the intimacy of it. And then the other side, with the guys around the table, when he breaks the bread, probably the way that he do it, the fact that he does it,
but also
brings back a memory.
But also those scars, like if you think of the account of the crucifixion, we don't get detail about, we hear that he's beaten and bruised, but the most significant ones that they lift out, the wounds, are the nails through the hands and in the end when they pierce his side. So to me, it makes sense that would be what he comes to show and say, just so you know.
With Thomas, yes.
Yes, this is a physical reminder of this is still me. But the rest, I would assume, would make you believe that, okay, but it's him, but it's different. He's resurrected, he's been made
it's
new.
A new body.
And even those scars, obviously, I don't suppose they would be sore or anything like that. It's just like a mark.
I think it's evidence forever. Like in Revelation, when it speaks about the Lamb looking as if he's slain. So something about that is to his glory for all eternity. There's going to be a mark on him that says, remember why we're here. Why we're allowed here.
And maybe it's only Jesus' body that will look like that and not ours. You know, we don't know. I don't think Scripture tells us what our resurrected bodies look like.
We get a conversation of that in Corinthians, where it speaks about the resurrection body. But just it's all to the fact that there will be, and the body is different. It points to fish. It says fish have different bodies than land animals. You know, those kind of things. Different bodies for different creatures. And all of that pointing to the fact that our body's going to be different. But it doesn't give us detail. Just the fact that Jesus could disappear and reappear in a room, I don't think that's necessarily just to do with the fact that he's got a resurrection body. Because even Stephen...
he appeared.
On the road in Acts with a Ethiopian. And then he's gone. So God is not limited by that. I
No.
think it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It can happen to me, it can happen to you.
Yes.
I don't think that necessarily is a element.
Yeah. I think, yeah, 100% that appearing, because he says to them, don't be afraid. I
Yeah.
mean, because obviously he just appears in this room, which is something our minds cannot, we don't think that way. We think you're going to come through the entrance.
Yeah.
We'll hear your footsteps or whatever. We might smell your fragrance or whatever, where Jesus is just there.
Yeah.
And it does make it different. But I agree, I don't think it's limited to the resurrection.
Yeah.
But it does speak to some kind of glorification because, like you say, that's a miracle. That's something that we don't, and miracles are manifestations of heaven.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it more plainly. And we don't see that all the time.
No.
Yet it's happening with Jesus here, I think 11 times. He
Yeah.
appears now after his...
Comes again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every time everyone's a bit like flustered. Okay, how did this happen? How did you get here? And let's not forget
Yeah.
all of those who came out of their graves along with Jesus.
Yes.
I think it was mentioned in chapter 19.
Yes. Yeah.
That must have
At the
been quite
crucifixion, yeah.
a sight. There's my uncle or
All
somebody.
these meetings,
Yeah. And they walking around, they were dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's happening here?
Yeah.
Quite
Yeah.
a miraculous time, yeah.
No, it is glorious. Absolutely. It lifts your spirit just thinking about
Yeah.
it.
And I think we have to look at this and go, why is the resurrection so important? It is the
Let's dwell on that.
Yeah, because I think a lot of debate and questioning of Christian faith, often this is the thing that wants to be refuted. Like, was he stolen? And even there, the in the Bible, that was
They
some of
come
the
up with it.
arguments. Yeah. But I think that saying, and it's almost like it echoes through history. That saying of people won't die for something that they're not 100% convinced by. You must be crazy to die as a martyr for something that you don't know is true.
It's fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much evidence. There's so much, and I mean, we probably don't have the time to go into that, but it's worth a study of if in any way you doubt these things, which I don't think we should.
Yeah.
But there's enough evidences of, I mean, these eyewitness evidences. Or there's 11 accounts.
Yeah.
Of Jesus being raised from the dead and appearing, and we see him at his ascension, ascending to heaven. And that is what the foundation of our faith is. If Jesus didn't rise from the dead, then we have no power over sin in our lives.
Yeah.
We cannot be born again. All of these things mean nothing if he's not raised from the dead.
Yeah. Now, we're not going to go into the book of Acts. We're going to stop at the end of the
Yeah.
book of John. But there you see the absolute change in these disciples, that the fear is completely gone. And they're willing to come out of that room and start speaking about it,
Yeah.
filled with the Holy Spirit, absolutely certain of what they know to be truth, and speaking about it against all odds.
Yeah.
They can be
boldly.
beaten, whatever. It's death is defeated. Sorry, it's got no more hold on us.
Yeah.
What Paul says, where's your sting? It's
Yeah.
gone. Yeah,
And there are still people dying today for
Yeah.
standing for exactly that.
yeah,
They are martyrs because they stand for Christ,
yeah.
which is the evidence of the power of the resurrection.
Yes, yeah. And now we're sitting with John, which writes at the year about 100. And all of the eyewitnesses with him of the accounts that he's writing about, they're no longer there. This is the only gospel written at a time where there's nobody else that could physically stand up and speak to these things.
Yeah.
Every one of the other gospels is written in a time when there's still eyewitnesses,
Yeah.
which at every time can stand up and say, no, sorry, that never happened. Jesus never did that, or Jesus never rose from the grave, or we didn't see him on that day in the room.
Yeah.
There's 120 of us. Sorry, but he wasn't
didn't
there.
happen, yeah.
There's all of that witnesses is there to say this is true, or to refute it, which
Yes.
they never did.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. Yeah, so don't cling to me, Jesus said, for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. What's happening there? How do you see it playing out? Go find my brothers and tell them I'm ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. So listen, I'm not done yet with my work.
Yeah.
Right?
Which-
There's more to happen.
Yes, yeah, and we see that play out, right, in all these, almost like tying up loose ends,
Yeah.
as such. He appears to Thomas, and Thomas is an interesting character. Like, we don't know a lot about him,
Yeah.
apart from this, I think, where he doubts. But I think Thomas represents a lot of us, because he says to him later on, blessed are those, you're blessed because you believe because you've seen now, but blessed are those who believe who haven't seen.
Yeah.
So I think there's a message in that for us to go. Sometimes we only believe when we see the evidence.
Yeah.
But for us who believe before we see the evidence, you are blessed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's all these kind of messages that I think that still needs to be said by Jesus himself before he then goes to the Father.
Yeah.
As he says,
Yeah.
which that is just one of them.
I'm not in that meeting yet there in the text. Can I quickly go back to that timeline of ours?
Yeah, please.
Because now we're at the end of the conversation with Mary. She's told, go and tell the disciples. And now it gets a bit interesting because Jesus appears to Mary Magdalene. It's that moment that we saw. He says, don't cling to me. I can just see her falling at Jesus' feet and says, I found you again. I thought I've lost you and I'm never going to let you go again. That kind of thing. He says, wait, I still need to go. Jesus appears to her and then tells her to go tell the disciples, and she's the first witness. And then other women see Jesus on the way. The rest of the four, so the other three, they then see Jesus, and he repeats this thing. Tell my brothers to go to Galilee. In other words, there's a meeting that he's setting up there. And then the guards that you referred to earlier, they go and report to the Jewish leader, the grave's open. We don't know what happened. He's gone, And then they come up with a story and say he's been stolen. And then towards evening, so it's still the Sunday, towards the evening. Interesting that the Bible calls it the first day of the week. For us, it's the last day of the week. The week starts with Monday. The Jewish day starts with rest.
Yes.
Jesus appears on the road to Emmaus. He's walking with these guys. Some of the disciples are leaving. It's a little town close to Jerusalem. And then at the table, suddenly they realize it's him. He disappears from the table, and he appears in the middle of the room in Jerusalem. It was like in a different town.
Yeah.
Boom, just like that. And it's a closed room. Thomas then, as you refer to now, he's not there at that meeting. And then a week later, Jesus again appears in a room with all the disciples together, and Thomas is there, and then it's this account of, put your hands in my wounds, and he then believes. And then we don't know how long, but some time later, Jesus is at the Sea of Galilee. All the fishermen, this is the last chapter that we're going to read, they're on the boat, and he stands on the coast. Peter realizes it's him after the miraculous catch, swims to the shore, and there Jesus makes breakfast for them. He already has a fish. I love that. We'll get there. And then 40 weeks after this, for 40 weeks after his resurrection, Jesus walks around, and in some of the letters, later in the New Testament, we see there's another meeting where there's 150 people all together. So there's more appearances of Jesus over this 40 weeks where people see him, hear him speak. And then Jesus is on the mountain in Galilee, lastly, and he ascends into heaven. So that then, as far as the timeline is concerned, maybe a last couple of thoughts. Will we put it down there? It's for today.
Yeah, I reckon that's a good place to park it. I think it's difficult. I realize in the conversation it's difficult to stick to the verses where we are because you know where it's going. And I do think this timeline is very important to be aware of.
Where everything fits in.
Yeah. So maybe that's something worth, encouraging everyone to go look into that within the next week or so, and go and look at Luke's account and Matthew and Mark, and see how you can piece it all together, because it's always very interesting to see how they all fill each other and add the details, and there's so much more, because we can't just read John and think we've got it all. Which obviously this is our study, but I realize we don't do a great exegetical job always, because we do jump around. And it is important.
But we'll pick it up there at verse 19, I think, in our next session. Memory verse then for today is verse 9. For until then, They still hadn't understood the scriptures that said Jesus must rise from the dead, and just the amount of times that Jesus said that to them, word for word, but it's just too big to understand. And then it happens, and the lights go on, and they realize this is what's been prophesied all along. So thank you, Jesus, for your resurrection. Thank you that you rose from the dead and you conquered our greatest enemy, and that we will live with you for all eternity. Bless you.